Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? So I have a question for you. Have you ever gone out to an inexpensive buffet and you've marveled at the vast display of freshly prepared hot food just waiting to be devoured? You choose the perfectly fried tempura shrimp that, unbeknownst to you, may have been mixed with a binding enzyme called transglutaminase, otherwise known as meat glue. Yeah. This is not an unlikely scenario, as meat glue, though banned in the European Union, is classified by the US FDA as generally recognized as safe. Go figure. Back in 2012, there was a story about pink slime, or AKA finely textured beef, and that struck a chord of disgust in the meat-eating public. I mean, pink slime, it's just gross. Can you imagine? It's not meat, it's not beef, I remember a story coming out about chicken nuggets from McDonald's, and it was made with pink slime, if you remember that. So petitions were formed to get the product out of the school lunch program, and there was a celebrity chef. His name is Jamie Oliver. And he conducted a pink slime demo where he put beef scraps in a washing machine and then soaked them in ammonia and water. Rah, rah, rah. And right before the slime hit the fan, no pun intended, another underground meat practice story came out. And it was the use of this glue, meat glue. And now, even though meat glue has this potential to be a lot more hazardous to your health than this pink slime, for some reason, the public couldn't quite seem to wrap its head around in the same way. I mean, I know that it's like the kid that sat in the corner of the schoolroom eating paste. You just don't eat glue. I mean, for crying out loud. So, while some stories appeared in the press at the time, there were no petitions or consumers calling for the FDA or the USDA to do anything about it. In fact, big-name chefs even came out in praise of this meat glue. And then since 2016, a certain restaurant chain has been using the catchy slogan, "You can't fake steak," in its TV commercials. While we can't say whether or not that particular chains of steak are the real McCoy or not, the fact is that the slogan is wrong. You indeed can fake steak by simply using meat glue. At one time, meat glue was manufactured entirely from the clotting agent extracted from pig or cow's blood. Now, it's typically made by cultivating bacteria to do the job, and most of the meat glue supplied to the food industry comes from none other than, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, so I'll spell it out, Ajinomoto, Ajinomoto, the company that brought MSG to America. But like MSG, this Ajinomoto claims that meat glue is ubiquitous to nature. No, it's not. Typically, it's found in various plants and animals. Where MSG is concerned, that premise really does not hold much water, as bound glutamic, I know I said that wrong, acid found in things like meat and mushrooms or tomatoes is quite different than the free glutamatic acid that is added to food, MSG that's added to food. Now, new research has found that this might also apply to meat glue that's sprinkled on meat or sprinkled on seafood. So what makes this meat glue, and what does it allow restaurants and manufacturers to get away with one of the most devious forms of food fakery. Even the meat industry, when it defends meat glue, has to acknowledge that it can be used to fool consumers and diners. Meat glue is used much more often to fake a steak than to make gourmet shrimp noodles. By sprinkling this enzyme on various scrap pieces of meat or chicken or even seafood, and then binding it tightly together like you would if you were making a meatball, and you tighten it together, and then putting plastic wrap on it and then refrigerating it for several hours, you can turn out a picture perfect filet mignon, a solid piece of chicken, or top dollar looking filet of fish. If you've ever attended a banquet or a convention, or even if you've gone to like a really nice wedding, okay, with the reception and all that, or you've dined in like a Michelin star restaurant, and you were served an expensive looking steak or sushi at a bargain price, you may have wondered how that came to be. Well, the answer is either that the restaurant owner is losing money with each meal, or more likely, they're using a bag of meat glue in the kitchen. The fake food industry has also found use for meat glue in product bizarrely called Just Egg. I've never heard of this until I started researching it. Just Egg. It's something that contains no trace of eggs at all whatsoever, but along with brain-damaging amino acids, you will find meat glue listed on the Just Egg label. It's yet another excellent reason to read your food ingredients carefully, no matter what brands and the products that are actually given. So, fakery aside for just a sec, meat glue could be contributing to the growing epidemic of food poisoning that hits millions. And that's because pathogens mostly appear on the surface of the meat. When the outer surface is seared, even if the meat is eaten medium rare or rare, that bacteria is most often killed. But when multiple pieces of meat are combined, however, those pathogens could be lurking in the center. So no more medium rare, stuff like that. Okay, so surfaces of the meat that were once on the outside are now in the middle. And if you haven't cooked that meat thoroughly inside and out, like, well done, shoe leather, you could be in for some big trouble here. So the amount of bacteria on a steak that has been put together with this meat glue is 100 times higher than your average piece of unglued meat. And the same is true for chicken and also for fish. Now, if you asked the FDA or the USDA, and certainly this Ajinomoto, you're going to hear that the meat glue is perfectly safe. Sure, there's that little problem of bacterial contamination, but these U.S. consumer protection agencies appear to be quite confident that restaurants know that glued meat needs to be cooked thoroughly. You can't have medium rare. You can't have any of that because of contamination. So the USDA calls it TG enzyme and gives instructions for cooking stuck together meat that sounds exactly the same way as it would tell you about cooking all types of raw meat. As far as the FDA is concerned, there's really no problem with the Ajinomoto making its own determination that meat glue is generally recognized as safe. So I think it's not safe, but anyway, back in the late 1990s, the USDA received several petitions from both the Ajinomoto and another company called AMPC about expanding the use of the TG enzyme and attempting to get the consumer labeling in the supermarket to be as innocuous as possible. So meaning they wanted to hide it. Both companies got just about everything that they wanted, and meat glue can now be used in meat products across the board. Both the kind the USDA called as standardized and non-standardized. This refers to what is called a standard of identity, a legal description of what it takes for certain foods to be able to use a name such as hot dogs, milk, cheese, bread, etc. For example, if you want to sell something called Salisbury steak, it must contain at least 65% meat, among other requirements. In the case of meat glue, the agency has to change the standard of identity for numerous items like, say, breakfast sausage, frankfurters, bologna, in order to allow for the use of the enzyme. Additionally, it also approved to be used as a binder, something added to food to thicken or improve its texture for certain meat and poultry products. As a result, it's quite possible that manufacturers are putting it to uses ways beyond faking expensive cuts of meat. Perhaps one of the most important reasons you need to go out of your way to avoid this additive, as I like to call them, has to do with a more recent discovery, one that might help the explosion of gut and digestive troubles that are plaguing so many these days. So that's all for this video, guys. Okay, be careful in what you're eating, what you're buying. If it seems too good to be true when it comes to prices, it probably is. All right, guys, you stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less. Ciao.